Then I went back and reviewed some of the limitations of the litigation privilege, and I realized Lively may have made a big mistake.
Word on the street is that they seriously messed up big time, and now it's got everyone buzzing. People can't stop talking about it. And guess who just jumped into the chaos? None other than Justin Baldoni. Yeah, you heard that right? Even Justin Baldoni is so shocked that he decides to speak up, you know this situation has escalated to an entirely new level. So, what exactly did Blake do to suddenly become the villain of this entire story? How did she go from admired to criticized? Practically overnight? Could this be the start of a major downfall for Blake and Ryan's carefully crafted public image? And just when you think things couldn't get any wilder, Hugh Jackman, yes, Wolverine himself, might have something to say about it too.
Hugh Jackman, Wolverine, will be deposed, and I suspect that might be making Ryan Reynolds extremely nervous.
The world around them is starting to crack, and trust me, Justin Baldoni's jaw-dropping reaction to this shocking scandal is only making things even more chaotic. You won't believe how fast their picture-perfect facade is falling apart, and we've got every detail ready for you. Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds have found themselves tangled up in a massive mess, one they created all on their own. They wanted to appear powerful, influential, and in complete control, but instead, they ended up looking careless, sneaky, and surprisingly reckless in front of everyone.
Hugh Jackman appears to be tied with all of this. We have Bradley Cooper, who Blake Lively thanked in the credits for It Ends With Us, seems to be involved in all of this.
It feels like this drama just never ends. At first, they tried to put on a brave face, acting as if everything was perfectly fine. But the truth didn't stay hidden for long. It came rushing in like a powerful storm, knocking them completely off balance. People quickly realized this wasn't just a minor dispute, it was a full-blown legal circus, carefully orchestrated to mislead the public and shift the blame onto someone else for issues that Blake and Ryan may have created themselves. It all started with whispers about Blake Lively allegedly using fake witnesses and questionable legal tactics to paint herself as a victim in court.
It felt almost like nervously so from her team of how much that clearly was the most important thing for them.
She seemed to think that all she had to do was say a few fancy words, shed some tears, and the judge would instantly take her side. But that plan backfired in the worst way possible. The judge quickly caught on to how she was twisting facts to fit her own narrative. Juries can't stand liars or people who create false stories to gain sympathy. Trials are about uncovering the truth, and no one appreciates being manipulated. The moment people realized what Blake Lively was actually up to, her reputation began to crumble at an alarming rate, and there was no turning back.
So there are a number of high-profile celebrities outside of Blake and Ryan Reynolds that will be dragged into this, and there may be some discovery that gets dragged up that is linked to them.
She seemed to believe that the rules didn't apply to her, as if she was entitled to a completely different set of special privileges. It was almost like she thought she was above everyone else involved in the lawsuit, as if her status alone should be enough to tip the scales in her favor, but the judge wasn't buying into any of it. They quickly picked up on Blake's behavior and saw right through her attempts to manipulate the situation. Instead of proving anything real, it was obvious she was more focused on deceiving people. She even tried using tears to paint herself as a helpless victim, but it was clear how staged it all felt.
I don't know how much is going to come through in the transcript that can be read now, but audibly, because we were able to call in to that hearing and listen to it, there did seem to be a lot of stress and a lot of tension, particularly when it came to those points.
She believed that throwing around complicated words and dramatic expressions would be enough to win the case. She thought she could step into that courtroom, sprinkle in some legal jargon, shed a few well-timed tears, and magically sway the judge in her favor. However, her emotional act turned out to be nothing more than a poorly staged performance. People weren't fooled for a second, and the truth became impossible to ignore. Now, her carefully built reputation is crumbling, and her career is taking a massive nosedive that no amount of damage control can seem to fix.
Now, the judge has ruled and does agree that high-profile third parties that are not involved directly in the lawsuit, they are entitled to some privacy. Therefore, any of their information may likely be deemed attorney's eyes only.
She thought she was untouchable, but reality hit her hard. She quickly realized she wasn't as powerful as she believed. Judge Lyman had seen enough and wasn't buying into the act. He called Blake's lawsuit nothing more than a massive media spectacle. It was clear this case was never about real justice. It was just another attempt to control the narrative and manipulate public perception in favor of Blake and Ryan. Unfortunately for them, the only people who ended up falling for their own deception were Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds themselves. The more they tried to twist the truth, the faster their entire scheme unraveled before everyone's eyes.
It just, given what we're looking at and what's happening and the backlash and everything else, I can't imagine Blake's celebrity friends are happy that it's gotten to this point.
It became more obvious by the day that they had absolutely no solid evidence to back up their claims. The judge also made it clear that Blake's testimony was a key factor in the case. However, if the jury caught her lying about even one detail, they would start questioning everything she said. Juries don't take kindly to dishonesty, and they certainly don't trust people who manipulate the truth for their own benefit. This entire lawsuit was nothing more than a staged spectacle disguised as a serious legal battle. And guess who found herself at the center of all this chaos? Blake Lively. You can only fool people for so long before the truth catches up.
You can only imagine what Blake Lively and Taylor Swift are texting about at any given time in the last 3 or 4 years. If we were to get our mitts on those messages, we would have to go to 5 days a week. We would have to go to 7. It would take till the end of time to unpack the messages between Taylor and Blake in 2024.
The judge heard the arguments. I felt Friedman made the better case.
She was the one facing all the fallout, and every time she attempted to twist the narrative in her favor, it completely backfired. The more she tried to control the situation, the more the truth slipped out, making things even worse for her. But that wasn't all. People uncovered something even more shocking. A secret audio recording of Ari Emanuel, a major Hollywood power player, surfaced, exposing the dark side of the industry. This recording hinted at a world where big-name celebrities could secretly blacklist others just to protect their own interests or settle personal vendettas. Now, everything is unraveling, and they're scrambling to cover it up.
Now they're going to have to prove that, and we'll have to see how much of what they share is going to be considered attorney's eyes only, or was it all BS?
The recording revealed something shocking. Ari Emanuel admitted that Justin Baldoni wasn't blacklisted for any wrongdoing, but simply because he was friends with Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds. It was as if they believed Hollywood was their personal empire, where they could decide who stayed and who got pushed out. This revelation flipped the entire situation upside down. Suddenly, the drama wasn't just about Blake's accusations. It was about power, control, and hidden agendas. Things got even messier when people realized that Baldoni's agency, WME, dropped him right after Blake made her allegations public. The judge, noticing all these shady moves, was left stunned by how deep this went.
The judge was calling both of them out. He was attempting to keep things being neutral, but there were definitely moments where Brian's arguments felt stronger than the other side.
There was never any solid evidence against Justin Baldoni. It looked like Blake and Ryan had simply pulled strings behind the scenes to destroy his career. But when the new audio recording surfaced, it exposed just how far they were willing to go. It was undeniable proof that they had major influence in Hollywood and weren't afraid to use it unfairly. The recording made it clear that this wasn't just a simple misunderstanding. It was a calculated move. When the judge listened to it, he instantly recognized that Blake's side had been deceptive and manipulative from the very beginning. The public quickly labeled the entire case one massive lie. Meanwhile, a spokesperson for Blake scrambled to do damage control, insisting there was another side to the story.
A spokesperson for Blake says today the court rejected the Wayfair party's objections and entered the protections needed to ensure the free flow of discovery material without any risk of witness intimidation or harm to any individual's security.
Clear that something suspicious was going on behind the scenes. Lawyers, journalists, and even the general public could see that Blake Lively's claims weren't holding up under scrutiny. It became painfully obvious that her words were more fiction than fact. Even her own PR team likely knew they were on a sinking ship and figured the smartest move was to distance themselves from her before things got worse. But the chaos didn't stop there. A Freakonomics podcast episode actually featured the explosive Ari Emanuel audio clip, only for it to mysteriously disappear without warning. The sudden removal raised eyebrows, making it even more obvious that powerful forces were working behind the scenes to control the narrative.
And he made it very clear that some of the things that Blake was afraid of coming out in court were not things that Wayfair was actively pursuing.
Newfound evidence in hand. people started questioning just how much influence these Hollywood elites really hold. If they could erase an entire podcast episode from existence, what else were they capable of? Sure, they managed to make that episode vanish, but they completely failed at erasing the truth. The audio had already spread, and once something like that is out, there's no undoing the damage. This was no longer just some passing rumor. It had turned into a full-blown scandal. And for Justin Baldoni, this meant he finally had the proof he needed to fight back legally and seek justice.
With this order in place, Miss Lively will move forward in the discovery process to obtain even more of the evidence that will prove her claims in court.
Winner would be her. The moment people saw through her act, the entire situation shifted against her. Blake wasn't just dealing with some internet drama, she was now facing a serious legal battle that had real consequences. Every false statement, every misleading claim she made in court was now coming back to haunt her. It was clear that she had tried to manipulate the public, the media, and even the justice system from the very beginning. While she might have played strong characters on screen, her biggest performance was happening right in front of the judge, where she desperately twisted facts to fit her narrative.
Of course, the internet is going to say, well, Justin Baldoni's side won here. And I think they're right.
She would probably claim the award without hesitation. Every time she spoke, the story changed, as if she was constantly rewriting her own script to match whatever narrative suited her best. She started with one claim, then twisted it into something else, adding even more dramatic details along the way to keep people engaged. Her complaint ended up being nearly 180 pages long, far longer than most lawsuits of this kind. That's like turning a simple short story into an overly complicated novel. But in her mind, adding more words somehow made her case stronger, as if drowning people in information would make them overlook how flimsy her arguments actually were. Be making up just to gain sympathy and sway public opinion? It was a turning point that shattered the credibility she had tried so hard to maintain. The legal experts who analyzed the case pointed out that when someone truly has solid evidence, they don't need to rely on exaggerated claims, emotional manipulation, or lengthy documents filled with fluff. Instead of proving her point, Blake's own actions started working against her. The supposed damning video clip, which she had hyped up as undeniable proof of wrongdoing, ended up being nothing more than a scene where she was visibly at ease, smiling, and completely comfortable. That single piece of evidence should have backed her claims, but instead, it dismantled them. The judge, the jury, and even the general public began seeing the cracks in her story. This wasn't just about one false claim. It raised doubts about everything she had said from the start. Baldoni's legal team wasted no time in pointing this out. They argued that Blake was trying to weaponize her celebrity status to control the narrative and manipulate the court's perspective. If she could lie so blatantly about a piece of evidence she claimed was critical, what did that say about the rest of her allegations? It was a massive red flag. The case, which had already started to fall apart, was now unraveling at an even faster pace. And let's not forget, this entire spectacle wasn't just playing out in the courtroom. It was unfolding in front of millions, with media outlets covering every twist and turn. People who once supported Blake started distancing themselves, realizing they may have been misled. The backlash wasn't just legal, it was public, and it was fierce. The trust she had spent years building was slipping through her fingers, and at this point, there was no way to undo the damage. Be making up just to gain sympathy and sway public opinion? It was a turning point that shattered the credibility she had tried so hard to maintain. The legal experts who analyzed the case pointed out that when someone truly has solid evidence, they don't need to rely on exaggerated claims, emotional manipulation, or lengthy documents filled with fluff. Instead of proving her point, Blake's own actions started working against her. The supposed damning video clip, which she had hyped up as undeniable proof of wrongdoing, ended up being nothing more than a scene where she was visibly at ease, smiling, and completely comfortable. That single piece of evidence should have backed her claims, but instead, it dismantled them. The judge, the jury, and even the general public began seeing the cracks in her story. This wasn't just about one false claim. It raised doubts about everything she had said from the start. Baldoni's legal team wasted no time in pointing this out. They argued that Blake was trying to weaponize her celebrity status to control the narrative and manipulate the court's perspective. If she could lie so blatantly about a piece of evidence she claimed was critical, what did that say about the rest of her allegations? It was a massive red flag. The case, which had already started to fall apart, was now unraveling at an even faster pace. And let's not forget, this entire spectacle wasn't just playing out in the courtroom. It was unfolding in front of millions, with media outlets covering every twist and turn. People who once supported Blake started distancing themselves, realizing they may have been misled. The backlash wasn't just legal, it was public, and it was fierce. The trust she had spent years building was slipping through her fingers, and at this point, there was no way to undo the damage. Could see that she was only making things worse for herself, but she refused to stop. Instead of admitting fault, or even staying quiet, she kept doubling down on her claims, hoping that if she talked enough, people would forget the lies she had already told. The problem was, every new excuse she made only gave people more reasons to doubt her. Her argument about being forced to pretend she liked Baldoni was almost laughable. She's an actress. That's literally her job. If pretending to like someone on screen was an issue, then nearly every Hollywood romance would be a fraud. People quickly pointed out how ridiculous this excuse was, but Blake didn't back down. Instead, she tried shifting the blame onto right-wing influencers, claiming they were using the case to attack the Me Too movement. But that argument fell apart just as quickly. This wasn't about politics. It was about whether she had been telling the truth from the beginning. Legal experts started weighing in, making it clear that this kind of behavior could completely destroy her case. In court, credibility is everything. If even one part of a witness's testimony is proven false, the jury has every right to dismiss all of it. And in Blake's case, there wasn't just one lie. There were several, all stacking up against her. The jury wasn't blind. They could see the pattern. By now, the public had caught on as well. People were questioning why she kept changing her story and why she kept trying to control the narrative instead of simply presenting hard evidence. And with every desperate move she made, she lost more and more support. The trial hadn't even officially begun, but Blake had already lost. Where it mattered most, in the court of public opinion. How things have spiraled out of control. What started as a legal fight has now turned into a full-blown public disaster, and it's dragging both of them down. Even Hollywood, a place known for protecting its own, has started to distance itself from Blake. That says a lot. She was asking for 2.5 years' worth of documents, phone records, and private conversations from everyone involved in the case, yet she expected full protection for her own sources. The double standard was obvious, and people weren't buying it. It was clear she wanted to control the information coming out, not reveal the truth. Even some of the biggest names in the industry, people who usually rally around their own, were beginning to look at this lawsuit as an embarrassment. Instead of standing by her, they were quietly stepping away, not wanting to be associated with the mess she had created. Blake could have stopped at any point. She could have backed down, admitted fault, or even just stayed silent. But she kept pushing forward, convinced that her celebrity status would be enough to win. Unfortunately for her, the courtroom doesn't work like Hollywood. The law doesn't care how famous someone is. It only cares about facts. And the facts just weren't in her favor. Meanwhile, Ryan Reynolds must be feeling the weight of all this. His name is now attached to a scandal that keeps getting worse. No matter how hard they try to spin the story, it's clear that things are falling apart. And the worst part? It's all because Blake refused to stop when she had the chance. Now, there's no easy way out. How it all plays out in the end, Ryan Reynolds has always been known for his charm and humor, carefully crafting an image that made him one of Hollywood's most likable stars. But now, he finds himself linked to a scandal that just won't go away. The lawsuit has turned into a public spectacle, with people questioning whether there's any real truth behind it, or if it's all just another celebrity drama designed to manipulate public opinion. At the heart of it, the real question remains, did anything truly happen, or is this just another case of someone using the legal system to push a narrative? Blake and Ryan seem to believe their industry connections would be enough to shield them, that their influence alone could control the story. But that strategy didn't work this time. The public watched closely, and it quickly became clear. There was no strong evidence to back up Blake's claims. At one point, Blake reportedly thought about simply throwing money at the issue, hoping to make it disappear. That's a classic celebrity move, settling things quietly with a payout rather than facing real consequences. But in this case, that approach wasn't going to work. Judges don't take kindly to attempts to buy an outcome, especially when public scrutiny is so high. As things got worse for her, she took an even more desperate step. She asked the court for something known as an attorney's eyes only protection order, essentially trying to control what evidence could be seen and by whom. It was a clear attempt to hide information rather than let everything play out transparently. But will the court allow that? And if this case actually makes it to trial, will the truth finally come out? Everyone is waiting to see what happens next.